Midnight Channel, your terror channel. Good evening, everyone, and now let's move on to today's story, which is about Mr. Daniel, and it happened to him in the city of Tampico, which is in Mexico, and at the time it was 2001, Mr. Daniel was 36 years old. And today, I'm going to tell you about something terrifying that I went through when I saw a werewolf right in front of me. And it all starts like this. I'm a policeman, and I work night shifts, making rounds with the car through the city's neighborhoods, and one night, I was driving the police car through a rural village, and my partner said that we should cross that area of farms to get to another neighborhood to buy something to eat. When we were driving through the rural area, we heard 2 gunshots in the distance, so we decided to investigate, and we talked on the radio to police headquarters and told them what was going on, and then we continued driving the car along a dirt road, heading in the direction where we heard the gunshots. As soon as we reached the dirt road and saw 2 men in front of a ranch talking, we approached them, and they told us something strange, that one of them was asleep, and that suddenly his daughter woke him up, saying that there was a monster with its eyes lit up in the window, and it only didn't get into the girl's room because it had iron bars. So he took his rifle and went out into the yard, and that's when he saw a strange animal prowling around behind his chicken pen, and at that moment his dogs went after the beast, but the invading animal attacked the dogs, and as it was a bit dark in the yard, he couldn't identify which animal it was. The farmer said that he shot at it, and his dogs and the creature ran away frightened, at which point the strange beast fled through the ranch's fence. The other redneck said that he was in his yard, and that after the shots were fired, the creature ran past his ranch, and then he saw that the animal stood near the wire fence, and it looked like a man, but with big ears, and that to this redneck, it was a werewolf, because he walked upright, only on 2 legs. And this creature saw him, so the redneck got scared. He ran into his house, and soon after, he saw his neighbor armed in the middle of the bush, already chasing the werewolf. With this whole story, my police partner and I didn't believe these reports of werewolves, but we thought it might be a maned wolf, or even a maniac who was acting out in the woods at dawn. So we started prowling around the ranches and farms, shining our flashlights through the undergrowth and seeing nothing. Then we called police headquarters on the radio and explained what was going on, and then we continued making rounds with the police vehicle through the dirt roads of the region, and it was then, on a certain road, that we saw by the light of the car's headlight, a bush in the undergrowth moving just ahead. At that point, we began to suspect that it was someone else and not the werewolf, so we decided to go after it to get the story out of the way, and what we did was to get out of the car and go into the undergrowth through which it had run. And it seemed that something saw us and ran off through the woods. At that point, we began to suspect that it was someone else and not the werewolf, and we decided to go after it to clear up the story, and what we did was to get out of the car and go into the undergrowth, where it would have gone. Once we were in the vegetation, we turned on our flashlights and walked around a bit, so we saw a ranch near there, and we thought that what was running away from us could be hiding in that ranch, so we walked to the fence of that property through the undergrowth, and when we got to the fence of that ranch, we looked around the yard, and we were startled. There was a strange creature walking around the ranch, so we turned off the light and watched it, because there was a strange creature walking around that ranch, so we turned off the flashlight, but we saw that the creature went close to the house on the ranch, and to our surprise, the animal stood up like a man, and the beast opened the window of the house on the ranch, and went inside the house. But that wasn't all. We were desperate because there might be someone inside that house, and that werewolf was going to tear them apart. So we quickly jumped over the fence, weapons in hand, and chased the werewolf to the house. Arriving at the house, we quickly broke down the door. My partner and I then heard the sound of footsteps running through the house, and then we heard some noises, and when I shone the torchlight into the last room, I saw the creature going through a broken window, so I went back to the yard with my partner, and we went around the back of the house, and we saw the creature jumping over the fence, and it went into the dark vegetation and disappeared. Well, we stopped chasing this werewolf and went to see if there was anyone in the house, but we found out that there was no one living there, because the house was empty. It was a property that was for sale. We stayed there a little longer, but the creature didn't appear, so we decided to make a few more rounds around the area to try to find and capture this werewolf, which, according to my information, had a habit of opening the windows of houses, and that was a very dangerous thing to do, and my partner also agreed with me that this beast was a werewolf, because this monster had a head almost like a dog's, with big ears, and it also had a hairy body, and it stood up like a person. Apart from anything else, the fact is that we prowled around several streets looking for this werewolf until dawn, and we didn't find the creature again. Then my shift ended, so we went back to the police station and told the story to our deputy, and he told us that other police stations already had this information about a strange animal that was prowling around in the woods in the region. I was surprised by what he told me, but the deputy said he would sort it out, but he asked us not to say anything to the other police officers as it was a confidential matter. Of course, we obeyed his orders, but my partner and I decided to go back to the ranch where we found the werewolf. We arrived at the ranch and entered the house, but we soon saw that a country bumpkin was passing by, and we asked him if the property was for sale, and the country bumpkin said yes. I asked the man if he had seen anything strange on the property, and the man told us that sometimes he saw an unknown man on the property who perhaps slept around the house at night, and it was just a wanderer. But this landowner also told us that he had seen this guy a few times walking the streets in the area, and that he came into this place and was a stranger, and that his body was full of scars, as if he had once been attacked by an animal, which had hurt him a lot, or it could have been some other kind of accident as well. After that conversation, we left the place, and when we returned to work on the other days, the deputy changed the location of our nightly waves, so we could no longer investigate this werewolf case, and even on my days off, I would sometimes pass by that place to see if I could find the guy with scars all over his body, but talking to people in that rural village who had seen this man with scars, I learned that his scars were caused by an attack by a large animal, and also that he never appeared there again. However, thinking about this whole story, I came to the conclusion that the guy with the scars on his body was perhaps attacked by a werewolf, and that he too had turned into this creature of the night. But to this day, I remember the werewolf that I chased that night. Well guys, thanks for watching my video, and if you liked the story, subscribe to the Fear Zone channel and leave your like. Now Fear Zone, your channel of haunted stories. Hello everyone, and this story happened to Mr. Caesar from the city of Cruz Alta, which is in Brazil. That was in the year 1992, when Mr. Caesar was 48 years old. And today I will tell a haunted story in which I saw a werewolf bringing terror to some residents of my neighborhood, and then I managed to discover this mystery. Well, to start the story, at that time, I was working on a farm as a caretaker where I lived with my family, and my job there was to do everything. I watched over the place and did small repairs in the corrals and fences, and also took care of the farm animals, which normal things of the countryman, and in this region there were several farms too, for sure a good place to live. One night, I was doing a quick round the farm, to see if everything was okay, and while I was walking through the pasture, I saw several chicken feathers on the ground. I got scared about this, and went to my house, and got my hunting rifle, and went back to the pasture to investigate what was going on. I went to look at the chicken coop, and saw that something got in there, and killed several chickens, but what amazed me is that something got in over the top of the coop, and tore the roofs off, and managed to get into the coop. However, I thought it might be a man that did this, because if it was an animal, he would be trapped in the chicken coop, because he wouldn't be able to get out. I walked hidden through the pasture of the farm, and about 50 meters ahead, I saw an animal inside my farm, and I saw that this animal was very big. I stayed hidden near the fence to see what it was. Although I couldn't identify what kind of animal it was, I saw that its fur was dark. From the looks of it, to me, it was this animal that killed my chickens, so I walked towards this creature to get closer so I could shoot it and put an end to this animal. But at this time, something happened that I didn't expect, for the creature suddenly stood upright, as if it were a man, and I lay down on the ground quickly to hide, and I was very frightened, for this beast was a werewolf. I saw that this creature kept sniffing the air, and looking around trying to find me. It seemed to suspect something was wrong, and this werewolf got back on all fours, and ran to the fence and ran away, and I took advantage and ran back to my house. I stayed at my window watching the farm, and I was worried and afraid, and thinking about the cleverness of this werewolf, because this beast entered the farm, and destroyed my chicken coop without making a sound, and my dogs did not even notice this creature inside the property. Well, time went by and the werewolf did not appear, but around 4 o'clock in the morning, I saw a strange man passing near my farm, and he was wearing some clothes very fast, and he seemed very scared, but soon he disappeared into the woods. However, next, I saw 2 men passing near my farm, and they were 2 Kaipira friends of mine, and they seemed to be hunting something, or was after something, but I saw that the 2 were armed. I took advantage, and went to my backyard to talk to them. It was Mr. Jose and his son, and they said that they thought that some invading animal attacked their farm, but they saw a naked man, who stole their clothesline, and therefore, they were hunting this man. I told these friends that I saw this suspect passing near my farm, but I also told them about this creature that entered my farm, and that the next day we would solve the maniac's problem. Then the day dawned and I went to talk to Mr. Jose, and after some information from some locals, we found out where the suspect who was naked in the woods worked. One night, Mr. Jose and I stayed hidden in the woods and chased the suspect, and it was the same man who I saw wearing the clothes at dawn, and to our surprise the maniac disappeared into the dark woods, but we found his clothes lying on the ground along the trail. We walked through the woods, but we couldn't find the maniac, and we returned to our homes. But the next day, Mr. Jose and I agreed to go to the farm where the suspect worked, and when we got there, we managed to find the man we were looking for. My neighbor wanted to know why he was in the woods at night, but the suspect said that he had mental problems, and that sometimes he would get disturbed and disappear, and when he returned to normal, he was somewhere isolated. My neighbor didn't even want to know, and said that if he saw him in his yard again, he would shoot him with his gun. After that we left, but otherwise, the point for me is that this guy could be the werewolf that entered the farm where I lived. Anyway, my neighbor and I thought about following this suspicious man during the nights, but soon we learned that this guy had left our neighborhood. And for me, that guy who walked around naked and unclothed was the werewolf, and this is my experience that I had with this creature. Well, And before we go to the other story, subscribe to the channel and leave your like to receive more videos of scary stories. Good evening everyone, and now, let's go to today's story, which is from Mr. Francisco, and it happened to him in the city of Lavras, which is in the state of Minas Gerais, and at that time, which was in the year 2007, Mr. Francisco was just a teenager. And today I will tell you the surprise I had when I met a werewolf in the night and spent much danger with this creature. And it all starts like this. At the time that this story happened to me, I was still a teenager and lived with my parents on a farm, which was on a road near a farm. However, I knew the caretaker of this farm because his son was called Robson, and he was my best friend, and this boy was a teenager too, and we almost always went to school together, and sometimes I even spent the day on the farm where his father worked. But what happened right at night is that I was in my room, almost asleep, and suddenly I started to hear a lot of barking dogs in the distance, and after a while, other dogs started barking from nowhere near the house. With that, curious, I started to look through my bedroom window to the outside in the backyard, and it seemed that there was nothing, so I went back to sleep. When the day dawned, I got ready and went to the farm of my friend Robson, and when I passed this property, I saw that there was a garbage can of the farm with some leftover chickens, which were thrown away. But what happened there is that these remains of chickens were all scattered on the floor, and it seemed that some animal or dog would have made all that mess. As soon as I met my friend Robson, leaving the farm to go to school together, I told him about the chicken scraps. He told me that it was the second time that this had happened on the property, and that it must have been some dog from the street that had done this, and that his father was mad with rage and wanted to capture this beast. Well, we left this story behind and went to school, and my life went on as usual, but after a few days, one night, I was at my friend Robson's house, which was inside the farm, and we were watching TV until dawn. But soon we began to hear many barking dogs, and the strange thing is that the dogs on the street barked, and then they stopped. Then other dogs from the back streets of the farm started barking, and my friend Robson suspected that it could be that beast that messed up the leftover chicken meat from the other day, and Robson's father, who worked on this farm, also during the afternoon, had thrown another batch of leftover chicken in a garbage can on the farm. So, we were looking out the window of the house, in the direction of the garbage cans, and a little while later, to our surprise, a huge animal's figure passed by the farm's fence and went in the direction of the garbage cans. At this time my friend called his father, and the caretaker then took a shotgun, and so, Robson and his father and I were together walking in the backyard of the farm, in the direction of the creature. While we went down to the pasture, that animal noticed our presence there, but to our surprise, that beast waited for nothing, and he came on 4 legs, running towards us at great speed, and it was running very strange. It seemed to be a big ape, and as there was no time for us to run from that huge black beast, the caretaker quickly took his rifle in his hands and shot that creature twice, and that animal ended up falling and rolling on the ground. But even though we were frightened by the beast's attack, Robson's father had his rifle in his hands and was still pointing the gun in the direction of the beast, which had a very bizarre appearance, for it looked like a monkey with big ears, but it also looked like a deformed dog. Even the caretaker didn't want to hurt this animal anymore. Suddenly, the creature started trying to get up from the ground, and to our amazement, this beast stood up, only on 2 legs, and he walked a few meters staggering, as if he were a wounded person, but he fell to the ground. At this time my friend and I, and the caretaker, ran back home, because for us, this strange animal that Robson's father shot twice was a werewolf. because besides being a kind of dog-like creature, it had macabre eyes, because they were lit. The fact was that the caretaker ended up calling the police and told about what happened on the farm. Still, we looked at that creature through the window, and that werewolf was crawling on the ground to try to escape the farm, but as he was very injured, he ended up fainting. After almost half an hour, the police car arrived on the property, and so the father of Robson was talking to the police, and he took these military to where the werewolf was lying on the ground. I was a long distance just watching all that action. Well, I realized that the werewolf was still alive, but already almost dead, and the guards were frightened by what they saw there on the floor, because we could not deny that that animal was a werewolf, but this creature gave his last breath and died. However, to everyone's surprise, the werewolf began to undergo transformations in its body, because by some kind of magic, the werewolf's body began to become less hairy, and the creature's face began to resemble a human face, and after a while, the werewolf became a man. With this event, the cops understood the whole story, in which the caretaker had to shoot the werewolf to stop the werewolf's attack, and also, the cops said that if they had arrived here after the werewolf became a man, they would never believe this werewolf story and would arrest Robson's father. So, the policemen ended up taking the body of this dead man, and they didn't even tell the police headquarters, and these military said not to tell anything of what we saw at dawn, because they wouldn't know what could happen if their superiors knew that there was a dead werewolf around here. Well, we agreed to keep this secret, but anyway, after that frightening nightmare, I became afraid of these woods in my neighborhood, especially at night, because I could run the risk of seeing another werewolf like this any day. The fact that I have told this secret nowadays is that a long time has passed since that occurrence, and until today I don't know what the police did with the body of this man who became a werewolf, and Robson's father, who was the caretaker of this farm. After a few months that he shot the werewolf, he felt bad to continue living and working on this property where the werewolf tragedy ended up happening, and he ended up moving from there, and I don't even know where they went. But to this day, I keep thinking about that day when I was in great danger from the werewolf. I stay smart in the woods here in my region because I know that these creatures exist and these werewolves are real. Thank you for watching the video, and if you like the story, leave your like and subscribe to the channel.